It's now time for a break from learning so that we can now actually apply everything we learned in this section so far to our first coding challenge. And in this one, we're going to start building a football betting application. And for my American friends, that is called soccer. So let's say that we get some data about a particular football game from a web service. And so this is what that data will look like. So an object with this information about the game, so the date, who scored, the score, an array of two arrays with all the players. And you can get this data for yourself either from the challenge PDF file that is at the beginning of the course, or from the final code of this section that is available in the GitHub code repository that you downloaded for this course. Okay, so in this challenge, we are going to work with that data. And so here are your 7 tasks. And trust me, most of them take only 1 minute to complete. Anyway, create one player array for each of the teams and call them players 1 and players 2. In each of the arrays, we assume that the first player in the array is the goalkeeper and the other 10 players are the field players. So for team number 1, which is Bayern Munich, create a variable called GK for the goalkeeper and then an array called field players with all the remaining 10 players. Next up, create an array called all players, which is going to contain all the players of both of the teams. Okay, next up, it says that Bayern Munich used 3 substitute players. So that's team 1. And so I want you to create a new array, this one here, containing all the original players plus Thiago, Coutinho, and Perisic. Next up, take the game.odds object and then create one variable for each of the odds and call them team 1, draw, and team 2. All right, next up, write this function print goals, which should receive an arbitrary number of player names, and so not an array. And then the function prints each of the players to the console and also a string with the number of goals that were scored in total. So that were scored, let's say here, in total. So for example here, it would be 4 goals because we have 4 players. Okay, so for this number 6, use the players Davis, Müller, Lewandowski, and Kimmich. Okay, so first call the function with these 4, and then after that also call the function with the players that are in game.scored. Okay, and so that's the players here that I just showed you, these 4. Finally, we assume that the team with the lower odd is more likely to win. And so now your task is to print to the console which team is actually more likely to win, but without using an if-else statement or the ternary operator. So this might seem like a lot of work, but it's really not that hard, I believe. So please try to do at least some of them. And even if you're not able to maybe finish one of these last 2, it's as always good that you try at least. So take 15 minutes or half an hour, and then I see you back here. All right, hopefully you managed to finish some of these tasks, or even better, all of them. And so now let me show you my solution here. So first off, creating the 2 player 1 and 2 arrays. And so we will do that using destructuring, and we're going to destructure this players array. Okay, so this is one big array which contains 2 arrays in there. And so we can create one variable for each of these by simply destructuring the original array. So players 1 and players 2 is the result of destructuring game.players. Okay, let's take a look. Players 1 and players 2. And indeed, these are exactly the two arrays that before were together in game.players. And now they are these two separate arrays. Okay, next up, we should create one variable goalkeeper and then one array with all the remaining players. And whenever you hear remaining, you can think of the rest syntax, right? And so again, we will use destructuring, and we will do it based on the players one array. So the team of Bayern Munich. And so from there, we take the first value and store it into the goalkeeper variable. And then the next variable should be called, remember, field players. And it should contain all the remaining values that haven't been taken from the array yet. And so we do that using the rest syntax. So let's check again, goalkeeper and field players. And indeed, that worked beautifully. Next up, our task is to create one array with all the players. So all players. And so simple enough, we can use the spread operator to extend both of the player arrays. So players 1, and so that's the first 11 players, and then we also put all the other 11 players of Borussia Dortmund here as well. Okay. And indeed, we get one single array with 22 elements, so with all of the players in there. So I see that with this, you're starting to see how useful these very simple to use operators are, and that without them, we would have so much more work to do. Anyway, in this exercise, we're going to create a new array, which will contain players 1 plus 3 other players. So that's players 1 final. And so let's just do what I just said. So we take all the players of players 1. So we are unpacking that array basically into this new array. And then we add the 3 new ones. Thiago, Coutinho, and Perisic. And this one, we don't even need to take a look at the console. We can be sure that it's correct. Next up, we want to create 3 variables based on this odds object here. So team 1, then this one here should be called draw, and then team 2. Okay, and so let's actually do nested destructuring here. And so basically do it like this. So we're going to destruct just the game variable. So to make it a little bit more even of a challenge. So we could do game.odds here already, but let's just do it like this. So we take game, and from there we take the odds property. And so if we did just this, then this would now create one variable called odds with the entire object in there. But that's not what we want. And so we can further destructure this result. And so remember, we used the colon here again. And to me, this is maybe the most confusing part of this structuring. But, well, that's just how it works. All right. And so now basically we are inside of the odds object. And so now we can just take team 1, X, and team 2 out. So team 1, X, and team 2. But now remember that instead of X, we actually wanted to call it draw. And so we use again the colon and then give it the variable name that we want. So that's just like we did it before with the restaurant, but of course applied to another context. Draw and team 1 or team 2, just to make sure. And indeed, these are exactly the 3 values that we have up there. Next up, number 6. So this is going really well. So let's create our print goals function now. Like this, which remember should take in an arbitrary amount of players. And what we mean by that is this. So let me start by calling the function here to make that more clear. So in the test data, it says to use Davis, Müller, Lewandowski, and Kimmich. So just like this. But then, of course, it's supposed to work just the same with another number of players. For example, just these two. All right. And so the way we specify that here in our code is to use the rest parameters. Remember that? So this will then basically aggregate all the incoming arguments into one array. And now let's start by logging here how many goals were scored. And so that is, of course, the length of the incoming players array. So players.length goals were scored. And so, indeed, this first call here gives us 4 goals were scored because we have 4 arguments, and then 2 goals were scored. All right. And then after these examples, the instruction tells us to use actually these values. So this game.scored array. Okay, now we cannot just do this, right? I mean, we can, but it's not going to give us the result we are expecting. So instead, we get 1 goals were scored. And so that's because we only passed in 1 argument. Let's take a look actually at the players to see what I mean. And so the problem here in this last function call, let's take out these 2. So the problem is that now we get 1 array, and in that array is this array with the 4 elements, right? And so instead, we really need these arguments here one by one, right? So we need to take the players out of the array. And I hope that you can see where this is leading. And so we use the spread operator to do just that. And now we are correct. Great. Now we were also supposed to print all the players one by one to the console, but I'm not gonna waste time with that now. We already did that so many times before. Finally, let's now print to the console which team is more likely to win based on the odds variables. So basically these variables that we created here before, team 1 and team 2, which contain these odds. So remember that the team with the lower odd is more likely to win. And so we should now print that to the console without an if statement or the ternary operator. So you can probably guess that we should use a logical operator for that, right? So what we need to test for first is to check if team 1 is less than team 2. And in this condition, team 1 is more likely to win, right? So let's already print that to the console, and then we choose the logical operator, which allows us to reach the goal here. So team 1 is more likely to win. So basically, we want this here to be evaluated when the result of this operation is true. And which is the logical operator that continues operation when the first value is true? Well, it's the AND operator, right? So the OR operator short circuits when the first value is true. And so that's not what we want. So because then right now it would short circuit and this would not be evaluated. But in this case, when this is true, we actually want the evaluation to continue. And therefore, this is the way to go. And so, yeah, team 1 is more likely to win. Now, if the odds were the other way around, let's say here we had 11, then nothing would happen. And so now we also need to do this here another time and do the opposite, basically. So now if team 2 has less than team 1, then team 2 is more likely to win. And so now we get that corresponding result there. Let's put it back. Okay. And challenge completed. So I hope all of this made sense and that it was a great way of reviewing everything that we had done so far.